levels of hockey for a long time, men's and women's college, and I coached for the Red Bulls one season with Pierre Pagé and Ray Ortsulainen and those guys.
Great.
And Anders Mielander. And so, and I'm, I live in Calgary like Wally, and I've played a lot of hockey before I did all this.
Yeah, I had a boy that played for me when I was coaching in college who was from Calgary. A Lucas Smith. He younger guy though, like Smitty just graduated probably 2 years ago, so he's probably 26, 27.
Yeah, I didn't know him. So where are you at?
I'm in Connecticut, in the States.
I've never been to Connecticut.
Yeah, it's not. It's a good area. Small state. Doesn't take you long to get through it.
Yeah. What's that connected to? I can't.
Yeah, not like up where you guys are.
Yeah. Not a lot. It's not a short drive. Some of the drives are like 8 hours, and you're still not got a lot of province left.
Yeah, we got a couple of states like that. Pennsylvania's like that. Texas is like that. California, take your wild drive from one end to the other.
Montana.
Yeah, New York too, really, because you go from the city way up to the Canadian border.
Yeah.
Peter, what's your background? And if somebody comes on, I'll get you to introduce yourself again. But
sure,
give us a little update. Go ahead.
So I've been coaching for close to 30 years. Done everything from youth level to prep school to midget. Coached some girls high school, ACHA club hockey. Just retired from coaching NCAA Division II hockey at Post University in Connecticut. So a lot of building, a lot of starting programs is kind of, for one reason or another, that's kind of how my path was. It started a midget team. We were fortunate to do well. Same thing with prep school, and just ended up our second year in the league. After I was coaching at Post for 7 years, it was our second year in the league, and we made the finals. So I retired after that and turned it over to, I got a really good boy that had been with me for 7 years from the start, but known him since he was 13, mid-30s. He's got that energy and passion, and also 2 brand new babies. So he needed it more than I did, really, I think.
Well, Tom has been coaching the state female team, and he got an email last night from a girl that it was quite an email. I'm going to share it with all the Sharks. It was, guys our age, we have trouble getting coaching job, and Tom's one of the few guys who still plays hockey. He goes on the ice probably 3 times a week. I think he's 75 or 6 years old, and he just loves hockey, and he's an active coach. He goes on the ice. I don't go on the ice anymore. I just sort of BS and do more. Well, the word mentoring, I'm not sure about what that means, but I just hang around, and when people are interested, we have good conversations. But Tom, I wonder if you could just elaborate. We've got Mike Benelli who's joined us. I don't know if Mike's met Peter before, but we've got
Mike and I go way back.
Okay, and that's how you found out about this illustrious Sharks group?
It is.
Okay.
Mike told me about the initiation and all that. We covered that.
Hi, Mike. Is that Mike?
And Hal Terse as well from Minnesota. Do you know?
Hey, Hal.
No, I do not.
Okay, well.
Good morning.
Hal, I'm going to get you introduced to our new guest, and then I'll get himself to do a quick intro. And the score is 3-2, Americans versus Canadians today. So welcome aboard, guys. Go ahead, Hal.
I guess
Excuse me, guys. I got to jump off. My painter just got here.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm just a hockey coach from Minnesota for like 50 years. And I've enjoyed doing this, and I seem to learn every time I'm here, and hopefully I occasionally make an intelligent comment as part of the discussion. So I think that's kind of it. Wally, what do you think?
Mike, you're out in the sun. What's going on?
Yeah, sorry, I was just logging in for a little bit. I'm up in Nantucket, so I'm just trying to sneak away from vacation for a little bit. But no,
Nice.
I just wanted to make sure I got on because I didn't know what the subject was today. But I know I've been sharing our calls with Coach Whitney, who was at Post University and started a program there and coming through the prep ranks. And he's got a great history. He's actually would be a great guest just because of his own history. But you know, I figured he'd be a great addition to the group. He's retired now, so he needs something to do for a couple hours on a Thursday.
Well,
That's it. Yeah. Well, I'm not chasing grandkids around. Yeah.
Yeah. So I think he's a great addition, and I think he'd love some of the conversations. And I think last week was so great. You would hope that that could be shared with so many more people.
yeah. Did Peter, have you listened to last week's conversation at all yet?
I have not. No.
Okay. We had Mike Gardner on, who was the head coach of the Memorial Cup winning team in Canada. And Mike's coached college hockey all his life, been very successful on numerous national championships. And he took over a major junior team which got lost in the playoffs. And he had 39 days to prepare for the Memorial Cup, which is sort of the major tournament in Canada.
Sure.
And they were probably the lowest ranked team as the host in the tournament, but it was quite a miraculous story and an excellent story of how to coach and manage and prepare and what you have to think of. The details he covered, it was just phenomenal. Yesterday, I received a text from Danielle Goyette. She's a former national player with our women's team. She's a skills coach at the Toronto Maple Leafs now, and she used to coach the University of Calgary here. And being an ex-Olympian with 3 Olympics and having coached university hockey for a number of years, she's in Toronto working with the Leafs and discovering she knows more about hockey than people that are coaching because they're still developing. So she's morphed into a role where she's shared that presentation with the American League head coach. And she sent me a text yesterday thanking me for sending it. And she said she took the time to listen to it so she could take notes. And I texted Gardner, shared the text with him from her, and he was pretty happy to get the word out. So I think we're all in the same boat, except we're trying to improve the game for the better, and we're not really involved in it, but we maybe can influence it. So that's, our hair is getting gray, and you've lost yours, or I don't know if you shave it or not, Peter. But
Wait a minute. What are you saying? I'm bald?
well, I'm not sure of it.
No, you're right. You're right.
Yeah. Anyway,
my friend's mom she never, God bless her, just passed away, but she never dyed her hair because she said, I want people to know that I earned every gray hair that I have. So I think I take that in the same way as I earned every hair that I lost.
well, I'm really curious here. Tom, I'm going to get you to just talk about your situation. I've assisted Tom just occasionally. I go watch practice, and can you tell your story about taking over this team? They had a young coach, and they railroaded her off the team, and the team was struggling. So, of course, Tom stepped in and give a bit of background there because it's all about the problems that we're talking about and trying to deal with. And when you're as experienced as we are, you have the answers. But we made the same mistakes when we were coaching. So, Tom, can you share that story here for the boys?
Well, what I was doing is I was assistant coach for the men's college team, and I coached the Mount Royal women 10 years before until I went to Salzburg, Austria with the Red Bulls. And the players rebelled against this girl. She was hardly older than any of them. She'd coached not very much and hadn't even done very well. It was odd that she had this job. But anyways, the players wrote a 14-page complaint about her. And they ended up releasing her at Christmas, had to pay her out. And they asked me to take over. So I was doing the men and the women, helping with the men and coaching the women. And anyway, they'd only won 3 games in a year and a half. And Mike Kennedy, a former NHLer, he helped me. And we went 6-6. We caught the last place playoff spot, but the tiebreaker we lost, it was regulation wins. So we didn't make the playoffs. So anyways, just an aside, as they promised to pay me as a head coach, and they never have, and I'm asking for the money now. But anyways, I ended up being the head coach for the next 3 years of the team. And of course, first year we made the playoffs, and then COVID, we got shut right down. We practiced for, until start of November, I think, then got shut down. And so anyways, they didn't renew me. They wanted a female coach, and they hired a girl with exactly the same background as the one they got rid of. She's 23 years old. Some of the players played against her. She coached 1 year and came in last place last year. And she just took over. So anyways, looks like it's going to be not a very great year, but that's my story with this women's team.
Well, Tom, I know you're upset, and rightfully so, about not getting the job, but I've talked to a couple of friends. One of them lost his job. He wanted to stay on. He was the manager of a McMahon Stadium. That's a big football stadium in here, and he is really active. This guy's done marathons and whatnot. He didn't want to retire, and they forced him to because, as they told him, he was too old. So he argued the case, and he managed to get a year and a half of payout. And he's still looking to do some stuff in hockey, and he's voluntarily mentored and done a great job. But there's that disconnect between people our age and people who are in the trenches trying to make the game better. And we haven't really connected. And I don't know whether it's a common thing when you reach our ages where your usefulness and purposefulness tend to slip through the cracks. But Tom, I don't know if you would talk about, and then we'll turn it over to Mike, but the email, one of his former players wrote an email. She did an assignment in a leadership class at her school. Tom had coached her for, I don't know for whether it was 2 years.
Just last year.
Just last year. And when you read that email, if any one of us got it, we could die tomorrow and go to heaven. It was like the most complimentary email I've ever read. But it's nothing that didn't surprise me because I watched the way Tom coached. But when you don't win and you don't get results, and the players, some of the players and administration doesn't know what they're there for in terms of total development of people, plus becoming better players. That's what happened. So, Tom, can you talk a bit about the things that you might be embarrassed about that she said? But go ahead, Tom.
Oh, I don't know. She just said nice thing after nice thing. She did her own research on me, and a few things she got mixed up. Like she thought I was a captain at Bemidji, but I was never a captain. I was captain of other teams, but never at Bemidji. And anyway, this poor girl. I mean, I recruited her just before that first COVID year that we only practiced a bit. And the day before she came, she's a farm girl, really strong girl, farm girl from Saskatchewan. And her neighbor was going to pay somebody $300 to prune his tree. And her boyfriend said, "You don't have to do that. I'll go and prune it." Well, he fell out of the tree and died. So of course, she didn't come for a few weeks. She was pretty upset. I don't blame her. But anyways, she just, I don't know. She's just a hardworking, hard-nosed, pretty good player, and wrote a really nice. She had to do something on leadership and pick somebody as an example. So she picked me, and it was very, very complimentary. And but she started off the thing saying, "Please come back." The girls think I retired, but the guy didn't renew me. He What happened is we made the playoffs, and then we had a good chance of winning that COVID year where there was no games. There's nothing, because I had 3/4 of the team back and the two best players, two all-stars, the leading scorer and the top goalie. But then because there's so many 2-year programs, only about 6 of those girls now returned again, and you're trying to recruit and nobody's playing. Like there was nobody playing. And I had a team last year where half of them weren't really good enough for the league, and only 2 of the returning players were really on the top half of the team. So we weren't very good, and we didn't do very well. But we had a good year. The girls had fun and all that. But anyways, that's the way she goes in hockey. But
I'm going to read something here that she wrote, and I'm looking at the document. It's an assignment in a leadership class that she gets credit for doing, and she quotes different authors on leadership. And she says, as we see in Module 1 with leadership effectiveness, connecting results and relationships gives us leadership effectiveness. And that's by Linden, 2019. Tom created relationships with all of us before he worried about the results. He wanted to gain our trust, commitment, and to get to know each of us better. Once he had developed a relationship with all of us, he started to focus on the results. Tom, the results weren't for us to win the championship, although it would be a great bonus. Tom wanted us to become better players and people, and with practicing, team bonding, and our academic focus, by the end of the season, he accomplished this. Tom absolutely nails the definition of leadership effectiveness. He created something with the team that I've never experienced. So, Tom, I just wanted to share that. I'm going to send the document out for anybody who wants to take the time. But when you receive letters like that, and Pete and Hal, I'm sure you've run into kids that you coached years ago, and they come up to you and smile and greet you in a welcoming way. That's worth more than any money you get for being paid to coach. So, Mike Benelli, go ahead.
Yeah, thanks, Wally. So and those kind of emails are great. And obviously, Tom, congratulations on making such a great impact in such a short period of time. So obviously, that's a great tribute to you. The reason I wanted to chime in is, well, twofold. Number one, from the Tom Malloy side, Pete, just to let you, he's our he's the Facebook drill sharing guru. So so Tom, it was funny. I was doing a coaching introduction to coach them to a program down in Connecticut this past Monday, and everyone in the group had known your site. So it was great to see that they go, oh yeah, we steal all his drills. It's hard to follow the camera sometimes, but we love we take all his drills. We love what he posts. So that was great. That's coming from a pretty big coaching community there. So I think it was really fun to watch not only the younger coaches, the new coaches, the 25, 26-year-old coaches, but some of the older guys. And I know Peter Alden, who Pete Whitney knows really well. He runs this elite hockey program, and he said he follows it all the time. So I thought that was great too. This is just to show you how small the world is on Facebook, I guess. And then from a perspective of Pete Whitney, one of the reasons I think I've really been pushing Pete to get on this call is because of the stuff that Wally was just talking about. A lot of times, and Tom referred to it, even some of these younger coaches, that what Pete did, something, and what you guys do every day is something that should be like a model, that should be a pathway for young coaches for success, because of the fact that you and anybody that's coached, longer than 25 understands that, we've made mistakes and done the right things and the wrong things. And, so Pete took a program actually from nothing, Coach University, and with putting together an organization from scratch. And then, and Pete, you could chime in, because I don't want to speak for you, but there was never an expectation like, okay, we're going to win our championship in 2 years. It was always about building the program, building character, building your relationships, and then the success of the program would come from that. So, and that's really one of the reasons I thought Pete would be so valuable to this group, is because of not only his experience as a father and as a coach, as an educator, as a program developer and architect, but really just from a perspective of, giving younger coaches better pathways for success, and take it, right, for them to take that information and use it properly, instead of trying to reinvent the wheel and making the same mistakes and faltering. So Pete, I don't know, you could maybe tell, maybe speak a little bit about, really quickly, the journey of the post-university story, and something we talk about all the time about, not putting one thing ahead of the other as far as, building your teams.
Yeah, well, at Post, so the way that happened was in 2015, I was still working at the Gunnery School, which is a prep school in Western Connecticut, and I also worked in admissions there. You always wear a couple of hats when you work in prep school. But I basically sat down with the president of the university, and they're, colleges, universities create programs because they're trying to build enrollment, right? That's a big reason. So, plus in this case, the president at that point was a guy that really enjoyed ice hockey. So I sat with him in that April, and he said, he offered me the job, and he said, so the next question is, can we have a team by September? So I'm thinking, that's 4 months. So I want the job. So of course my answer is yes, absolutely. So in that 4-month period, I recruited a team, built a schedule, everything, right? Everything you imagine, uniforms, buses, whatever's involved with that. And I only bring that up because, to allude to what Mike's talking about, everything I've ever coached at has been to build a program. Because to me, a team and a program are two different things. A team is part of a program, but the program itself is the culture. And you've created an actual program when you can step away, and then that program, that team continues to succeed, then you've really created something. So I've been fortunate to have been able to do that. And while I actually, to one of your points there, you mentioned like, how do guys, as we get older and that, how do we stay more relevant, right? I think one of the cruelties of life is, right, when you get to a certain age, you've accomplished a lot, and because you've accomplished a lot, you no longer have that ego, right? Ego is not an issue with you anymore because you have confidence. I think that's something that I see lacking in a lot of the younger coaches, the 30-some-year-old coaches. They're all kind of trying to prove themselves. So, that saying, never let them see you sweat, right? I think that's one of the reasons that they potentially don't engage, at least very visually, unless maybe it's on the side with a phone call or something like that. People who have had the experience we have, because they want to show that they can do it. Right. I mean, to me, like, one of the most important things in life I've learned is knowing what you don't know versus what you do know. Like, it's okay to not know. What's not okay is to not know and not try to get better at it. So I think that's part of it. I think there's an ego thing related to that as you get older, I don't know about you guys, but as far as I'm concerned, it's no big deal. Like, I know what I know and I'm confident with it. And if somebody wants me to share the information, I'm happy to. If they don't, like, that's okay too, but I don't need them to. Whereas I feel like the younger coaches, there's a need there as far as the ego piece goes. I don't know what you guys think.
I think you're bang on with that. It, I've done a little reading on that. Ego is the enemy, and actually, I'm really glad you brought up that point on ego, because we all strive for recognition and approval, and the greatest need in human nature is the need to be appreciated. And whether it's a player on a team you coach, or a coworker, or even a manager or an employee, they both need appreciation. And I think that's sort of something we have to remind ourselves of. But when we're young, we're seeking it, approval, recognition, and the ego is the enemy. It's the thing that pulls you down. So for the audience, I'm just throwing out Eckhart Tolle's name and a book called The Power of Now. It's worth Googling. And he talks about the importance of the moment and not worrying about the past. You can't control that. Not worrying about the future, but staying in the moment. And the ego is really what takes you out of the moment. Doesn't matter if you're an athletic performance and you're on the field, made a bad play, your ego is affected, you don't feel good about yourself, and you're not going to perform well. I read that book recovering from a heart attack in 2007, and I just tied it in with sports psychology.
What's the name of that author again? I'm sorry.
Eckhart, E-C-H-E-R-T. E-C-K-E-H-E-R-T. The Power of Now is one of his many books. Tolle, T-O-L-L-E. And if you Google it on YouTube, he has 5-minute segments that are hilarious, but bang on. He talks about tennis and being in the moment and the beauty of sport in terms of just watching it and see those things happen when they happen. So it's just something that relates to this. And Pete, when you took over that team, how old were you? What was your coaching experience?
For Post University, you mean?
Yeah, that particular job that you took over.
So that particular job was in 2015. So at that point, I was 59 years old. I had coached prep school for 11 years, ACHA club hockey for 7 years, started a midget program with 7 kids, 2 of which were skateboarders, more than they were hockey players. So I had all that prior experience. And they were, the midget team was a team that was brand new. Same thing. I built that and created that. When I joined the prep school team, it was a team that had been 2-30 the year before. Was really a great bunch of guys. I'm sure you guys have experienced this too, where just kind of the tea leaves all fall together, so to speak, and you end up with just this great bond. And like we were together as a staff for 11 years, which in prep school is pretty much unheard of. Guys are always kind of moving around, and like we were fortunate. I mean, we did everything from win championships to NHL draft picks to Hobie Baker finalists, and so I think all that kind of stuff really prepared me to know what I was getting into when I started the post-university job. Was, again in April, and you guys know, like when you're trying to put a team together, April to put together a team for that fall is not really the best time to go recruiting because there's not a whole lot left available, right? So we had to teach those guys everything. Like literally, we had to teach them that you need to bring music into the locker room to play that before a game or before a practice. Like it was everything. Honestly, it was like raising kids, which I'm fortunate. I got a couple of kids, so I got experience doing that. And that's really what really was the approach that I took, was because that was one of the things with my assistant was his coach, they should know this stuff. I said, you're right, but they don't. So it's our job to teach them everything. And I said, that'll be the fun of it because we get to create absolutely everything. We get to create the culture of the team, what's acceptable, what isn't, the importance of community service, all those things that really make you a better person. And if you become a better person, you become a better teammate, you become a better player, because all of that success is simply a byproduct of all those other things.
How soon, and go back to when you were 20, finished playing, when you began, did it just happen naturally, or how?
Well, I was lucky because I grew up on a farm, a plant nursery. I was in horticulture in my family. We did that for over 40 years. And my dad was a World War II veteran who was in the Battle of the Bulge and all that good stuff. So he was a pretty straight shooter, and he was like just a great role model for me and just a mentor. So by the time I was in my early 20s, I was doing that full time. And to me, that's where it all kind of came together, because once I ran the farm, I use the same approach on the farm as I did with a team, right? I mean, we had 8 to 10 employees, and we were a team, and we had a common goal, and the common goal was, we talked about our common goals, and they had interaction of what, we'd have our weekly and then monthly meetings about where we're going, where they want to go within the nursery, that kind of thing. So it was, for me, it was pretty natural. I think it goes back to my upbringing from my dad, really.
And that's sort of what I was getting at. I think all of our parents brought us up the right way, and we just naturally morphed into walking the talk of the right way. We're dealing.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we're all pretty much on that same page too, right? Like there were no excuses then, whereas now there's a reason for every failure that a kid has in life, be it in the classroom, be it on the ice, be it on the tennis court. There's a reason for the failure, and the last thing is it's on that kid. We're gonna explore every other possibility as to why we weren't successful. That is not my fault. Instead of starting with that, asking the question, what could you have done different? And I think that's part of society today. So maybe that's why when we mention those kinds of things, right, to younger coaches and that, I think there's some words where they're like, I can't say that. But actually, you can say that if you say it the right way, right?
Do you do coaching certification clinics at all, Peter?
Actually, that's where I had the pleasure of meeting Michael Bonelli. I'm in Connecticut, but I was adopted by New York State, and I said that's okay because that's where my dad was born, actually in New York. So I've done the coaching clinics for years. I'm still doing some of that stuff. I'm going to do some podcasts. I've been talking to somebody about doing some seminars about like what it takes to coach, what it takes to play in prep school, what it takes to be a good college player. So I'm exploring a bunch of stuff still, like just being retired just means I don't have to do a 5-hour bus ride to St. Michael's in Vermont anymore, which is good.
Well, I'm gonna get back to Mike here. Mike, I think you knew in getting Peter to come on. I wonder if you would talk about, Mike, I believe we've got the answer to the problem. You've got all the ideas. We all have the ideas. We do things the right way. How do you get a generation, multiple changing generations, whether they're leaders on associations or young coaches volunteering, to do things the right way for the right reason? And Mike, the mission statement exercise that we're going to do on the 12th with the coaches site and rehearse it on the 7th. And I have a question whether I'm involved in the rehearsal, but to me, that's the switch to get coaches at any age to think about why they coach, to understand the purpose of coaching. This at noon today, I'm scheduled to do the exercise with a young female hockey coach at a university, Michael. She got to the national playoffs and she wants to do the exercise. She was on our Sharks call 3 weeks ago, and she wants to know how to take her team to another level. And I'm changing the approach with her, Mike, like with the coaches site people. And this is the question we ask them, Peter, at every coaching clinic. This is the module on ethical coaching that I deliver at the beginning of every certification clinic that I do. And I've done hundreds over the years. So, Mike, we asked everybody in the audience, which can be parents, players, administrators, what do they want to accomplish this season? What would they like to do better this season? And we work up, build a list and write them down and sort them into 2 columns. One is an outcomes column, and the other is a column of values, enjoyment, development that lead to outcomes. So, Mike, we start with the bottom. We put an X through the outcomes, say you can't control that, but how do you accomplish it? Now, I'm changing the approach, Mike, and I need your opinion. And with this college coach who's been in a national championship, I'm going to get her to write down her outcome goals. And then I'm going to ask her, well, how do you accomplish that? And I'll put them in a middle column. And then eventually we'll reverse it. So I'm not sure how the approach goes, but in the end, you have everyone that takes this module write a mission statement based on the values side, the process side, and they put it on a fridge magnet with their team logo. It's no more than 12, 15 words, and it's a reminder to every constituent, every participant of what they're there for, the process that you can control. So I'm just sharing that, Pete, because it's very timely with what we're going to do, and this female coach that she's buying into it, and she's an enthusiastic young coach, and she's one of those coaches that we want to influence. So, Mike, can you talk a bit about the potential of that, and maybe Peter can get the hang of it and try to play with it when he does stuff.
Yeah, so well, Peter, he'll get the invite anyway. So Pete, what we're doing in a couple of weeks with the coaches site, it's going to go out to their whole 5,000 member mailing list, and we're going to do a live mission statement workshop with Wally. And one of the pieces of this is that they'll sign up and they'll get all the information prior to them coming onto the Zoom call. Wally perform the mission statement with a number of live people. Wally will probably be like 3 or 4 coaches that we know on that call, and we're building the mission statement to them, and then anybody else that's on the call obviously is just there in the virtual sense. But then what Wally does is, which is pretty unique too, is that not only does he do the workshop, but then you send your answers and the information you've gathered to him, and then he'll provide feedback from that. The cool thing about one of the things that always, I think, catches me off guard is that we as coaches do this with our players all the time. We all have, I think most good coaches at the beginning of the year have a coaching meeting and come up with some type of a, expectation and goal setting and things like that, where they want to be. But what a lot of coaches don't do this is to themselves. They don't give themselves their own mission statement. They don't give themselves an opportunity to say, okay, what can I control? And what can I bring on to my players and the people I work with? What can I do to make this a better experience for them? I think people like you, Pete, do this inherently because this is, like you said, you've done this only because that's your history. You know that I've got to start with, the expectations and goal setting and how I'm going to get to certain outcomes, whether they're controllable or not. And I think this is what's lacking. So and Wally, Pete, knowing that we've had him in our coaching clinics in New England and New York State, he does this instinctively. Like this is his, if he's doing a seminar with our coaches, and I think Pete would agree, we don't do enough. And it's changed a little bit with USA Hockey over the last couple of years, but we've done more X's and O's than real, like, how are you teaching and how can you impact, and what are the things that you do as a coach that's going to influence and change the direction of how a player performs, instead of worrying about what kind of power play Post University runs and how does Pete teach that. And I think that's, for the youth hockey coach, it's so much more important to understand this mission from a perspective of how do we make better people and better, create better families and create a better environment to keep our kids in the game and create a better experience for everyone, including myself as the coach. And I think that's what hopefully we'll be able to start ticking away with this mission statement. So I think for you to have for all intents and purposes, Wally, right, a very successful coach in her field, coming back and saying, well, how do I even make this success better? How do I improve what I'm doing more than just maybe the wins? But maybe the end of that becomes more of a reality if I can build this better base off of knowing, how to approach these things with my kids. So I think I personally think it's great. And I think the fact that which is always very impressive to me, is watching the way you work and how you can pivot and evolve and change direction and go with the your gut feeling about where you need to go with some of the things, as opposed to a 19-year-old kid running a midget team, or a 26-year-old player running a midget team and still coaching the way maybe they were coached when they were a young kid, and not changing and pivoting and evolving and changing. So and I say the same thing about Tom. I mean, the way Tom uses video and incorporates video and sharing in his platform, you can't get a lot of young, iPad geniuses to do that. So it's really inspiring for me when I'm speaking to younger coaches to be able to use people like you as examples of mentors and program developers that are truly always evolving. And I think the mission statement workshop is one of those pieces for sure.
I'm really thankful that the coaches site's going to take it on. Peter, 40 years ago with Hockey Canada, I was doing work for them primarily because a good friend of mine that I played with was coaching the national team. And it wasn't a part of Hockey Canada at the time, it was the Canadian Amateur Hockey Association. And we had produced great X and O videos, two of them. One called Goals One, which was offensive hockey. Second one was Goals Two, defensive hockey. Mike, it was X's and O's. It was the best thing out in the time. And it's still in keeping with today's game. And we got a request from the Canadian Amateur Hockey Association because insurance rates were going up. Hitting from behind, aggression in the game, and they asked us to do a Goal 3 video. It was related to checking and respect in sport. And I was asked to put the video together and create 3 chapters. And the first chapter, which I borrowed from a coach who developed it at the University of Alberta, and it was applied to all their university teams over many years. And he's the John Wooden of Canada, Claire Drake, who has won. Talk about X's and O's, Mike. In 1 year, he had to replace football coach. He was assisting the football coach. He had won multiple national hockey championships. And the same year, he had to replace the football coach who was sick. He won both national championships in both sports. And the essence of what he did was what we're talking about, his approach. He had the X's and O's down, the right amount, right time, right way. But he also had the emotional intelligence of how to communicate and deal with people, which I believe is what successful coaches have better than others. And successful leaders. This isn't just a sports thing. It's a business thing. So anyway, like what happened, the national team folded because the NHL began to expand. And so the CHA took over Hockey Canada. And at the time of the writing of that module, to be put into the coaching clinics, like a mandatory thing, my vision was the first time coach is going to get it. And he's going to have to write a mission statement, understanding why he's coaching. He's going to have to learn to walk the talk. At every level of clinic you take the same module, but you take it to another level and you revise it to the high performance level like we've talked about, Mike, today. And that's the first time I've thought of reversing it. You want to win a championship. That's what you're there for. But if that's all you worry about and your ego is going to be affected, your emotions are going to be affected, that'll affect the players and you're doomed. Well, it slipped through the cracks, Pete. It never happened. And the powers to be have the power to implement it, but they didn't. Nothing to their fault. It was just, that's what organizations do. They change leadership, companies change, new people come in. They just don't have the feel that we have for the needs of the sport in terms of how it can influence society for the better. So I'm really optimistic about it, Peter. I think it's automatic for you and Tom and myself. Our success and Tom's success, numbers of national championships, provincial championships, um, city championships in multiple sports speak to the way we coached, because we coached the right way. And it wasn't focusing on X's and O's. It was knowing how to teach and develop those skills, but knowing how to get them to participate and give their best effort all the time, be motivated. So anyway, I'm really glad we got to talk about it. Peter, what do you think of the idea of a module like that? And it's one thing for you to do clinics for Michael with a number of associations. Politically, I've been involved with Hockey Canada, and they can control every association in the country. And if that module became a part of what we're talking about, we could change the sporting world through hockey. I think it would make a tremendous difference, because that generation of players that becomes coaches would recruit people to serve on their association executives. Over time, you would have people the right mindset involved. So that's my vision for it. I'm going to go down fighting and keep it going. And thank goodness, Michael. I live from week to week. Like when I got the word from this girl, she wanted to do the exercise. Okay, I got to live that long. Now I got the September 12th. Okay, I got to live that long. And actually, that's what I do. I get excited about these opportunities, and the Thursday calls keep me alive, because I just play with them after, edit them, share them, send them out, and Peter, from a emotional intelligence point of view and an X and O point of view, I think the presentation by Gardner McDougall, I would say it's 90% emotional intelligence, Michael.
Yeah.
He knew the X's and O's, but the way he was able to communicate to those athletes at that young age was remarkable. So it all comes together, and hopefully we can keep getting the word out. And I'm looking to the coaches site to take this on and maybe influence the game for the better in an even bigger way than we can imagine. So
yeah, well, two things. I think that's, yeah, I think you're absolutely right. The coaches site now has become like really a great resource and a reach, and I think we can implement some things that are really going to help the coaching community and community itself, honestly, especially if we can find the right people to listen and go through the exercise. And just so you know, we've scheduled another one for June of 2023, so you got to stick around till then anyway. So you're forced.
I think we lost you, Mike. Anyway, we'll wait till he gets back on. Peter, that's a lot of stuff, like, Mike, are you back in? Oh, he's changing locations. He's moved inside. Peter, what
Yeah,
are your
well,
thoughts? What are your thoughts on what we've talked about here?
Well, first off, I think it's fantastic that you found someone who is of that level, a national winning coach, yet clearly doesn't have an ego. And like that person, like she is going to be successful simply because of that, because she's not going to trip over herself. It's not going to get in the way.
Yeah.
So I think that's fantastic. I think that's wonderful. I know one of the things that, like, I think we face, and I know Mike can, I think he's back there, I think he can chime in too. Like with youth hockey here, there's all different levels, right? There's the town and AAA and all that. But the biggest challenge that we have that I see with the towns is the reason that people get involved, right? The reason that someone wants to be the president of an organization. and what those goals are, and how do we communicate to them that you can get potentially to where you want to be, but it's okay for a town organization to be a place where kids love the game, have fun at it, learn all the life skills, and then hopefully somewhere along the line have some measure of success with the wins and losses. It's okay to be that, and you don't have to be a AAA program, a national bound program. You don't have to be that, and that part's okay. And again, it goes back to sort of like ego organization, ego who's ever in charge. So that's always been a challenge, at least in my state. You know, at the youth level, like it's okay to know who you are. Like it's okay.
I just gotta chime in. The reason I got knocked off is I've got to go stroke my own ego and go out fish my kids. So, but I got to jump off, Wally. We'll touch base about next week's. You are on the mock call next week, so we're just going to go through an example of the mission statement, and then everybody on this call or anybody that listens to you will get an invite to be on the workshop, which would be really great if they could join. So I think that's going to be a big plus for everyone and get the word out there, and obviously the reach that you guys have is international. So we're hoping that there'll be a number of people on the call from everywhere. So, but I want to thank Pete. Thanks for jumping on. I think it's I think it's long overdue, but I think it's great that if you could kind of earmark this on your calendar. Wally always has, and Tim, who's on the call either with Tom, come up with some great speakers and great subjects. And just like now, I mean, they literally can go on. If we're here on the East Coast, guys, so you got to remember we're hitting. We run into noon most of the time, so it's a great call, and I agree with Wally. It's something that I think I look forward to every Thursday, and just learning and evolving from the conversation. So thanks again for continuing to do this.
Before you leave, Mike, can I ask a question?
Sure.
Okay, my Facebook coaching page, somebody's been putting porn on it, so I blocked them and take it off, and then another one appeared today. I thought I had it solved. Do you have any idea how to?
I think the only way is to restrict you as the only admin. Like, I think do you allow other people to post things on there outside, just in the hockey world?
Yeah, some people put in stuff. Yeah.
Yeah. So the only way, I mean, unfortunately, it's just you're getting spammed. So you have to restrict it to just people that you want to be able to post things onto your site. Like right now, if I wanted to post something like, hey, we're doing the Wally Kozak mission statement workshop, I can do that as a user, but you might not want that. Like I know you don't like people putting things on there for sale and advertising and things like that. So I think you have to restrict it.
Okay, well, I'll try to figure out how to do that.
Yeah, if not, I can send you a link, because I had that happen to my site as well. It's like, Jesus. I mean, it's like once they get infiltrate in, it's so hard to keep it clean.
Yeah, because I'm afraid Facebook's going to shut me down if some of this stays on,
Right, and my stuff's more stupid comments. Like, people just don't like my comments. Like, we don't like you. Okay, well, I'm sorry to say, don't follow it then. But
well, I put a disclaimer on yesterday, and I said, I don't star in any of these videos.
Well, maybe you'd get more viewers. I don't know. But but again, this is great. Wally, we're on next week, so don't keep it on your calendar. But I think Justin will reach out with all the particulars.
Okay, terrific. Take care.
Pete, I'll send you some striped bass.
You better, yeah.
All right, guys.
Take care.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you.
Peter, how did you get to connect with Mike?
So one of the fellows that I used to coach with back in prep school, he was from New York State. He was a New York State guy, and he actually worked with Mike as far as USA Hockey, the different certification levels and that. And when he stepped away from it, he just introduced me to Mike, and that's how that went.
Okay. Now, have you coached any other sports besides hockey?
Not to any kind of a degree of this, like I played football. I was involved with that for a little bit, but not to the point of where, like the ice hockey part of it.
Were
I've
you,
always been a fan of other sports. I mean, I've spent a lot of time like talking to other coaches. That was one of the great things about like the university was kind of the way they had the setup was we were all in cubicles, so no coach really had their own office. And I was across from actually the women's basketball team, and he was great. He's a young guy. Like, how you talk about people who are like old souls, and like that's who he is. And he's the guy's in his mid-30s, but he's one of those guys. Again, no ego at all. I mean, he played professional baseball. He played for Bobby Knight, that famous basketball coach in the States, and then he played pro basketball. So listening to him and conversations with him and just other coaches, like I would talk to every sport, every coach to try to get an idea what worked for them, what their challenges were. And then there was a lot of collaboration, a lot of sharing. So like I've always been one of those people. I always wanted to know the why of everything. So sometimes I think it's great. Maybe at some point it was annoying to people, but so I've always tried to learn.
did you, like Tom and I were formal educators, teachers, and I coached football, wrestling, and track in high school. Got to experiment with teaching. And while I was coaching high school sports, I was working with the national team voluntarily as a skills coach. And I got to go away to high performance clinics because the head coach of the team was too busy coaching. So he would send me to Toronto, and I would have to sit in on a weekend of mental training for coaches, and the next day would be mental training for athletes, and I would bring those modules back and summarize them for the head coach of the Olympic team. But then I applied everything I did into my high school curriculum. I created a sports psych module for high school classes, and in Canada it's grade 10, one level, 11, 12, 5-hour modules to a 10-hour module. And I got to play with it all my life. And Tom, in junior high school, coached school sports, but the way he ran phys ed classes, we had that. I think with teaching, you sort of have to have an ethical base to become a teacher.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And my wife, my daughter-in-law would all agree with you because they're all educators, they're all teachers. And I did not formal teaching like the way you fellas did, but when I had my nursery, there's a community college where they had horticultural courses. So I would come in and teach a class here and there, that type of things. But really, it's just sharing the knowledge, not like having syllabuses and having the paths that you guys would actually have to do.
I'm going to ask Tom there were some challenging experiences in middle school, junior high school. And Tom, can you share, it just made him a better coach, but can you share some of your phys ed class application that you carried over and were able to apply intuitively into your coaching?
Well, I think when I started coaching or teaching, I'm sorry, I just had boys phys ed and options. There was some girls, and then I went to high school and I had the mix. But then my last 13 years of teaching, I had double classes in not that big of a gym, and so you got between 48 and 60 kids. And junior high kids, you can't have them sitting doing nothing because they'd be wrestling, it was just chaos. So I had to figure out how to keep 60 people active. And so it's all, and Johanny Walston, he's a Finnish guy. And the first thing he started, we developed a program, like I said before, for Austria. And we wrote a couple of coaching manuals. And the first thing is how you organize the ice, how to, into different ways to get players here and there. And, everybody does circuits. But so I looked at my gym and said, how can I make this that I can get 60 kids active at the same time? Most gyms have 6 basketball hoops. And we had 3 badminton courts, just over the size of a big volleyball court was the whole size of usually the gym. So I got an extra line put in there and made, like for volleyball, we'd have at each net 2 courts. I had a line that made it into 2 different courts. So, and then I had 12 teams of 5. And in those 12 teams of 5, that would be their group to practice whatever skill, So if we're working on a skill, that group of 5 kids would practice a skill. And then we'd have a game where they had to use that skill. And I really believe in tournaments and that for practice in class. Had a big chart with tournaments, and they'd maybe play 10 minutes, and then one from each team would go up, and the winner would circle a winning team. And like we'd always start with fitness, and we started, build on our running thing, and everybody had to start with push-ups, and they had to do 1 push-up first, and the goal was to everybody be able in the school to be able to do 25. And sit-ups, everybody had to work up to 50, and running, everybody in the school worked up to doing 30 minutes without stopping, every single kid. And they just, we used progressive overload, and they all accomplished that every year. And the kids I'd leave balls out, they'd come in and, rush in and grab a ball, take shots, try to be the first one there so they can do a little bit before the class starts. Because I went back there and they're sitting in squads. Who's going to hurry to sit down in a squad for attendance? But anyways, I just incorporated all these ideas of using a game to teach a game, and using space as efficiently as possible. And we also had a stage that we had a training circuit that we'd use. And, like our winters are pretty long here. And a lot of that was, a lot of the stuff had to be done inside. Outside, it's easier because there's a lot bigger space, and you have the gym. But anyways, that's how I did that. So I coach hockey like a phys ed teacher, and that's basically, and kids end up, they end up enjoying it. The Finnish Ice Hockey Federation had me 3 years come and run their national hockey school in Viramäki and stuff like that, because, well, first of all, Johanny was well known there, and they all knew I knew him. But I find it's a really good way to coach hockey and basically coach everything. And mostly it's from Johanny. He's basically the smartest sportsman I've ever known. He played 3 Olympics for Finland, and he's kind of the father of their hockey. It's kind of my story.
Yeah, and we've done, it's funny you say that, because it's so, what's great about some conversations is, again, I think Wally talked about this a little bit. I mean, regardless of who you are, how old you are, everybody wants some measure of approval or validation, right? And I used to work for Huron Hockey way back. And that was one of the things that we did way back then, like 20 some years ago or more. You got same thing like you're saying, you got 60, 65 kids on the ice. You better have 10 stations with things happening and kids moving all the time, plus a learning component, right? Because you're not just herding them through like cattle. They're supposed to learn something too. So just kind of hearing you talk about like how you approach
I have to
that.
run up. The painter's knocking on the door. I got to go see what he wants.
Uh-oh.
Okay, wait a sec.
Peter, I got, in terms of what you said, you, there's a sort of a disconnect between minor hockey and elite hockey. Now, elite hockey, I can say NHL, American League, NCAA, Major Junior, and I don't think there really is a disconnect, because if you're going to win the Stanley Cup or if you're going to win an NCAA championship, you have to do things the right way. And whether it's John Wooden, Claire Drake in Canada with numerous championships, the ability to teach is one thing, but the ability to communicate and get buy-in as a group is another. So I really believe that starting in minor hockey with this exercise, well, I would do the same exercise with the Philadelphia Flyers, but I would do it with the executive, I would do it with the scouts, and I would do it with the players. You have to do it from the bottom up, the top down, and the inside out.
Yeah, so
Literally,
you bring up a really good point there, and I don't think it's done. I'm willing to say it's not done, at least like town youth hockey level. Because we always talk about, like we talk about coaches, expectations and that. What about the players? Like going back to like even an 8 or 10-year-old kid, like I would love to see what his or her expectations are of the season. Like, what do you want? What do you want to do? Like, do you want to get better at backward skating? Do you want to get better at shooting? You know, obviously, probably every kid's going to say we want to win. But that would be really interesting as an exercise to see. And now you've got a template for that coach. Well, this is what your kids want. So are you going to try to create an agenda for them? Or are you going to try to incorporate what they want? And then you'll get success, right? Because they're going to want to be part of it, because anybody that has ever been involved in any successful team, right? You know that in order to be successful, you have to have buy-in from your players. And that can start at a really young age. That can start at 8 years old, 10 years old. I mean, trying to teach kids responsibility. I remember back when I was coaching squirt hockey, my wife would laugh when the phone would ring, and she'd hand me the phone and she'd say, it's Minnie Mouse on the phone. And she was kidding me, because if my kids, squirt hockey is 8 years old, right? If they weren't coming to practice, I said, I want you to call me. I don't want your mom to call me. I don't want your dad to call me. I want you to call me and tell me, so I know that you're safe and you're okay. But if you're not coming to practice, I need to know that. And it was like, it worked out great. That team was a lot of fun, successful, good kids. A lot of them, most of them kept playing. But at 8 years old, they would pick up a phone and they would call me and say, Coach, I can't come to practice. You know, I got a test tomorrow, or I got in trouble at school, or whatever it was. And it was a lot of fun, but I think it was good too. So I think even at the youngest age, making these kids part of it, whatever that may be, I think is really important.
Yeah, I think that's huge too, that they tell you and they're responsible.
Yeah, I mean, absolutely, because that's one of the things lacking, right? We talked about that earlier, about how today, and I get this, because I hear it, right, because I've got a daughter that teaches first grade, daughter-in-law teaches sixth grade, a wife that teaches, she has taught every grade. Right now she's teaching high school, but the same thread comes through when there's an issue. Why isn't it my fault? Not what I could have done different. So that responsibility, that buy-in, and it's one of the great things about sports, right? Like you can teach kids that in a positive way, not a negative way. Like, you're not in trouble because you did something wrong. Let's learn from it.
Yeah.
Because
Well,
otherwise they try to hide it.
even